The bus station woke up slowly that morning. The sky was still pale, caught between night and day, and the air carried a soft chill that made people pull their jackets closer. The smell of diesel mixed with coffee from a small stand near the entrance. Shoes scraped against concrete. Wheels rolled over uneven ground. Voices stayed low, as if everyone had agreed not to disturb the quiet. A Navy soldier stood near one of the benches, a duffel bag resting at his feet. His uniform was clean but worn, the kind that had seen many long days. He kept his hands in front of him, fingers loosely locked, eyes moving from the schedule board to the ground and back again. He looked calm from a distance, but his stillness felt heavy, like he was holding something deep inside. He had arrived early, long before his bus was due. He liked the time before crowds formed. Fewer questions, fewer looks, fewer reminders. The station was a place of movement, yet he felt stuck in one moment, waiting for time to move him forward. Not far away, a woman sat on the edge of another bench. Her shoulders were curved inward, as if she were trying to make herself smaller. A simple bag rested beside her, untouched. Her hands shook slightly as she pressed them against her face. She tried to be quiet, but tears slipped through anyway, falling onto her coat and the floor below. Every now and then, she wiped her cheeks quickly, hoping no one would notice. People noticed, but most did nothing. Some looked away out of respect. Others glanced, then returned their phones. In a busy place, sadness often becomes invisible. Across the open space, a man stood with a young girl beside him. They were waiting near the boarding line, a few steps back from the crowd. The man checked the time on his phone and looked down to make sure the girl was still close. She held his hand with both of hers, swinging it gently as she shifted her weight from one foot to the other. The girl was small, with bright eyes that took in everything. She watched people walk by, studied the buses as they arrived, and listened to the echoes of voices bouncing off the walls. At first, she noticed the soldier because of the uniform. It was different, neat, strong. Then she noticed the woman crying. Her grip on her father's hand tightened. She leaned closer to him and whispered something. He bent slightly to hear her, nodding as he listened. He gave a quiet answer, then squeezed her hand in return. She looked back at the woman, her face serious now, her eyes filled with concern that seemed too big for someone her age. The soldier followed her gaze without realizing it. He saw the woman then, really saw her. The way her shoulders shook, the way she tried to hide her tears. Something about it caught his attention and refused to let go. He had seen crying before, in many forms, but this felt different. It felt lonely. A bus pulled in with a loud hiss of air brakes, and the noise broke the moment. People moved forward. Bags were lifted. Voices rose. The soldier took a small step back to give others room, then returned to his spot. He looked again toward the woman. She was still crying. The little girl let go of her father's hand. She didn't run. She didn't rush. She took careful steps across the floor, as if she were walking towards something important. Her father noticed immediately and straightened, surprise crossing his face. He started to call out to her, but stopped when he saw where she was going. The girl stopped in front of the woman. She stood there for a moment, unsure, then gently reached out and touched the woman's arm. The woman looked up, startled at first. Her eyes were red, her face wet with tears. When she saw the child standing there, her expression softened into confusion. "I'm sorry," the woman said quietly, already feeling embarrassed. "I didn't mean to." The girl shook her head. "It's okay," she said in a small, clear voice. "You can cry." The woman let out a shaky breath. She didn't know what to say. No one had spoken to her kindly since she arrived. The girl glanced back toward her father, then looked at the woman again. She thought for a moment, the way children do when they are searching for the right words. "Please don't cry, ma'am," she said. "You can borrow my dad." The words hung in the air. Nearby conversations paused. A few people turned their heads. The soldier felt his chest tighten. He hadn't expected that. No one had. The woman stared at the girl, stunned. Then her mouth trembled, and a small laugh slipped out through her tears. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was the kind that comes when emotion has nowhere else to go. "Your dad?" the woman asked softly. The girl nodded with confidence. "He's really nice. He listens. He helps people when they're sad." The father walked over, unsure whether to apologize or explain. He smiled gently, his face warm but nervous. "I'm sorry," he said to the woman. She means well." The woman wiped her face and shook her head. "No," she said. "It's okay. She's very kind." The soldier watched from a distance, his eyes fixed on the scene. Something deep inside him shifted. He thought about how simple it was. How natural. No fear. No hesitation. Just kindness. The little girl stepped back slightly, satisfied that she had done what she came to do. She returned to her father's side, slipping her hand into his again. A station noise slowly returned. People began talking again. A bus door closed. Someone laughed. Life moved on, but the soldier stayed still. He looked at the woman, who now sat straighter, breathing more evenly. He looked at the father and child, standing quietly together. And for the first time that morning, he felt something loosen inside his chest. The bus station was still just a bus station. Concrete floors, hard benches, cold air, but something had changed, and the day was only beginning. The little girl stayed close to her father, but kept glancing at the woman, as if checking to make sure she was okay. The woman, still wiping tears from her face, looked around at the people passing by and then back at the girl. She felt a strange mixture of embarrassment and warmth. She had never expected kindness like this from a child, especially a child who had nothing to gain from it. Her hands still shook a little, but she tried to gather herself. She took a deep breath and finally spoke to the girl, her voice soft and careful. "Thank you for saying that." The girl nodded, smiling slightly. "It's okay. My dad helps people all the time. He says it makes the world better if we do small things for each other." The woman looked at the girl's father. He smiled at her quietly, unsure if she would understand that it was his daughter speaking for him. She nodded slowly, still surprised by the simplicity and honesty of the moment. There was no judgment, no questioning, just care. It was rare and precious. Nearby, the Navy soldier had moved slightly, though he was careful not to intrude. He watched as the little girl spoke, her voice calm and firm despite her size. He couldn't help but notice how genuine her concern was. In a place like this, with so many people rushing past each other, someone taking the time to care for a stranger was unusual. The woman finally lowered her hands completely and looked at the girl again. "You really mean that?" she asked. "Yes," the girl said. "You can borrow him. He will help you feel better." The father smiled gently at the woman, encouraging her. "She's a thoughtful one," he said quietly. "Always trying to help." The woman's lips trembled into a faint smile. For the first time in hours, she felt a little lighter. It was just a small gesture, but it mattered more than anything she had experienced that day. The soldier shifted on his feet. He felt something stir inside him that he hadn't felt in a long time. Watching this simple act of kindness made him remember the moments he had tried to offer comfort, the times he had helped people in small ways, and how much it mattered, even if it didn't feel like it. He thought about his own life, and the distance he sometimes felt from people who didn't understand the weight of his experiences. This moment, innocent and pure, touched him deeply. A bus arrived at the station. doors hissing open and passengers stepping off. The noise of engines, brakes, and chatter filled the air. The little girl tightened her grip on her father's hand and leaned close to him. He crouched slightly, bringing his face closer to hers. "She's sad," the girl whispered. "I see that," he said softly. "But maybe we can help." "Like how?" She asked, her voice curious. "By being kind," he said. "By showing her she's not alone." The little girl nodded. She looked at the woman again, then at her father. "Can we do that?" she asked. "Yes," he replied. "We already are." The woman watched this quietly, a feeling she hadn't had in a long time rising in her chest. She had been carrying grief for hours, maybe days, and yet this small interaction reminded her that even in the middle of sadness, there could be light. She wanted to say something, anything, but the words caught in her throat. The little girl, sensing her hesitation, took a small step closer and said, "It's okay to be sad. My dad says that crying doesn't make you weak. It makes you human." The soldier felt his eyes sting, though he tried not to show it. He had seen tears and sorrow many times, but hearing it put into words so simply, from someone so young, made it hit differently. He realized how often people ignored small gestures, thinking they didn't matter, when, in truth, they could change everything in a moment. The woman finally managed to speak, her voice small but steady. "Thank you. I haven't felt anyone care like this in a long time." The father nodded. "Sometimes the smallest things can help the most," he said. "A kind word, a listening ear, a little smile. It's not complicated, but it's important." The little girl beamed, feeling proud. She had offered comfort in the only way she knew how, and it had worked. The woman's tears slowed, and the corners of her mouth lifted into a tentative smile. It wasn't a big smile, but it was real. The soldier decided to step closer, careful not to intrude, and offered a quiet, respectful nod to the woman. She looked at him, then at the little girl and her father, and nodded back. There was a silent understanding between them, a recognition of shared humanity. The soldier felt an unexpected warmth, realizing that connections could be made anywhere, even in a noisy, impersonal bus station. Time seemed to slow. People moved around them, but for a few moments, it felt like the world had shrunk to this small corner of the station. The little girl held her father's hand. The woman breathed a little easier, and the soldier stood quietly, witnessing the impact of a simple act of kindness. The girl whispered to her father, "She looks a little better now." "Yes," he said softly. "That's because you helped." The woman's gaze softened. She looked at the girl and her father, then at the soldier. "It's amazing," she said, "how something so small can make such a difference." The little girl smiled, satisfied. She had done what she came to do. She didn't need to understand grief fully. She only knew that when someone was hurting, it was kind to offer help. And in this moment, that was enough. The soldier felt a quiet resolve building inside him. He realized that while he had trained for moments of crisis and challenge, life's true test was often much simpler, showing care, understanding, and humanity to strangers when they needed it most. He looked at the woman, hoping she could feel that he too cared. Even without saying a word. The father gently pulled his daughter back toward their waiting spot. "Come on, sweetie," he said. "It's almost time for our bus." The little girl looked back at the woman once more, giving her a small wave. The woman waved back, a smile faint but genuine. In that simple exchange, more was communicated than any words could convey. As they walked back, the soldier stayed near the woman, not saying much, but standing as a quiet presence. Sometimes that was enough. The bus station continued to buzz around them. People hurried, called out, and checked their schedules. Yet, in the middle of the noise, a small bubble of calm persisted where the little girl, her father, the woman, and the soldier shared a moment that would stay with them for a long time. It was a reminder that no matter how tired, how sad, or how overwhelmed someone might feel, kindness could reach across distances and differences. And sometimes it took only a child's courage to remind everyone of that truth. The Navy soldier stayed near the woman, noticing how she had straightened just a little, trying to gather herself after the child's words. He could see that the woman was exhausted, not just physically, but from some weight he couldn't name. She wasn't moving quickly, she wasn't talking much, but there was a quiet shift in her posture, a small relief, almost invisible. That told him she was beginning to feel a little safer. He had been trained to notice small changes. In his line of work, the smallest detail could mean the difference between success and failure. And now, in the middle of a busy bus station, he realized that this small moment, a little girl offering comfort, a father quietly supporting her, a woman accepting the kindness, was just as important as any mission he had ever been on. The woman looked at the little girl once again, a soft expression crossing her face. "You have a very thoughtful daughter," she said, her voice gentle. "She cares in a way that's rare." The father gave a humble smile. "She's always been like that," he said. "Even when she was smaller, she noticed when someone was upset. She tries to do something about it, no matter how little." The girl looked up at her father, pleased that he had acknowledged her. She beamed briefly, then looked back at the woman, as if checking that she still seemed okay. The woman's eyes met hers, and she gave a slight nod, a silent thank you. The soldier watched, his hands resting casually at his sides. He could feel something stirring in him, an emotion he hadn't allowed himself to feel in a long time. He remembered days of hard duty, moments when he had to be strong for others, times when showing vulnerability was not allowed. And yet, seeing this, he realized that there was strength in being present, in showing up for someone even without expectation. The woman shifted slightly, taking in a deep breath. "I haven't talked to anyone today," she admitted quietly. "I didn't even know it would help, but talking, even just a little, feels lighter somehow." The little girl smiled again, her small hand still gripping her father's. "That's what my dad says," she explained. "Talking can make things better, and even if it doesn't fix everything, it helps you not feel alone." The father looked at the soldier. "He's right," he said. "Sometimes it's not about fixing anything. Just being there matters." The soldier nodded silently. He knew that feeling. So many times he had been in difficult situations where there were no clear solutions, only people who needed someone to stand beside them. And yet, seeing it played out in such a simple, honest way made it resonate more than anything he could have imagined. Nearby, the station continued its usual rhythm. People came and went, their steps echoing on the concrete floor. The diesel smell lingered, and the distant hum of engines created a backdrop of life moving on. But for the four of them, the soldier, the woman, the father, and the little girl, the world seemed to narrow down to a few square feet where understanding and kindness existed. The woman finally spoke again. "I lost someone recently," she said, her voice low, almost like she was afraid of the sound of it. "I didn't think anyone could understand." The little girl's eyes widened slightly, but she didn't flinch. Instead, she held her father's hand tighter, listening. "It's okay to feel sad," she said. "My dad says that it's normal, and it's normal to cry too." The woman nodded, swallowing hard. "I know that," she said softly, "but it's hard to remember sometimes. You start feeling alone." The soldier felt the words cut through the station noise. He thought about all the people he had seen trying to hide pain, all the soldiers, families, and strangers who carried weight silently. And now, in the middle of this ordinary place, a child had reminded him and everyone else that compassion could bridge that distance. He stepped a little closer, though still careful not to crowd anyone. "You're not alone," he said simply. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried. The woman looked at him in surprise. She hadn't expected a stranger in uniform to speak, yet his words were steady, calm, and real. The little girl looked up at him with curiosity. "You're a Navy soldier, right?" she asked. He nodded, smiling faintly. "Yes," he said. And even soldiers need to remember that being human matters more than being strong all the time. The girl tilted her head, thinking. "So it's okay to cry?" He nodded again. "Absolutely." The woman let out a small, shaky laugh, and tears welled up again. But this time they felt different. They were no longer just sorrow. They carried relief, a sense of being seen, of being acknowledged. She reached for her bag, took out a handkerchief, and dabbed at her cheeks. Still smiling faintly at the child, the father crouched slightly to the girl's level. "See, you're already helping her," he said. "It doesn't take much. Just noticing and caring makes all the difference." The little girl nodded seriously. "I think everyone should try to help," she said, "even if it's just a little bit." The soldier, standing nearby, felt a quiet pride in witnessing this. He thought about how often the world seemed too big, too harsh, or too fast for small kindness to matter. But here, it did. In these small gestures, the world became a little gentler, a little more humane. A bus pulled in at the far end of the station, the brakes hissing as doors opened. People started moving again, pushing forward with their luggage and schedules. Yet the woman, the little girl, her father, and the soldier remained in their little circle, unaffected by the hurry of the station. The woman finally spoke with a little more confidence. "You know," she said softly, "I think I needed this more than I realized. I came here feeling lost, and now I feel a little hope." The little girl's eyes lit up. "See? I told you. My dad says hope is important. And sometimes you can find it in people you don't even know." The father smiled at his daughter, proud but humble. "She's right," he said. "Hope is always around. Sometimes you just need someone to remind you." The soldier remained quiet but attentive. He didn't need to say anything. The moment itself carried meaning, and being present was enough. He realized that he had spent so much of his life focused on action, on duty, on missions, that he had almost forgotten the power of simply being there for someone in need. The woman nodded, taking a deeper breath. She looked at the girl again, and for a fleeting moment, she saw pure, unfiltered innocence and courage. It was remarkable how a child could change the atmosphere with just a few words. How a simple offer of help could resonate deeply with someone who had been carrying grief for too long. "Thank you," the woman said quietly, her voice steady now. "You've reminded me that there's still kindness in the world." The little girl smiled, her hand still holding her father's. "You just have to notice it," she said. The soldier watched them for a moment longer, feeling an unspoken connection. He realized that even though their lives were separate, even though they had come from different paths, they had intersected in a way that mattered. The world could feel heavy, but moments like this reminded him that it wasn't always about grand gestures. Sometimes a child's words, a parent's presence, and a stranger's quiet acknowledgement were enough to change a day, even a life. The station continued its rhythm around him. The sound of engines, footsteps, and distant conversations creating a constant backdrop. Yet inside this small circle, there was calm, understanding, and compassion. The woman straightened her bag on her lap, took another breath, and looked at the soldier. "I think I can face the rest of today now," she said. "Thank you for being here." He nodded, offering a small smile. "Sometimes that's all it takes," he said softly. "Just someone being present." The little girl glanced at him, then at her father, and whispered, "I think he understands." "Yes," her father whispered back. "He does." The four of them remained there for a few more moments, quietly sharing this unspoken understanding. They were different people, with different experiences, yet they were connected in a way that was simple and real. It was a reminder that kindness, even small and fleeting, had the power to reach hearts that had almost forgotten how to feel seen. And in that busy, ordinary bus station, a child's words, a parent's quiet support, and the presence of a stranger had created something extraordinary, a human connection that would stay with each of them long after the buses had gone. Long after the moment had passed, the bus station continued to hum with life as the morning progressed. People shuffled past with their luggage, drivers called out destinations, and the echo of footsteps filled the high ceilings. Yet, in the corner where the little girl, her father, the woman, and the Navy soldier remained, there was a quiet stillness, a space almost untouched by the rush around them. The woman had finally set her bag beside her and sat a little straighter. The tears had slowed, leaving her cheeks damp, but her posture lighter. She glanced at the little girl and then at the father, feeling a sense of gratitude she could barely put into words. She had come to the station that morning feeling heavy, lost, and alone, but now, through a child's simple words and a father's gentle presence, she felt a small glimmer of comfort. The little girl, still holding her father's hand, leaned toward the woman and whispered, "Do you want to sit with us for a while? You don't have to be alone." The woman blinked at the offer. It was unexpected, and yet something inside her told her it was safe to accept. I think I'd like that," she said softly. Her voice carried a trace of hesitation, but also relief. The father gestured to the space beside him and his daughter. "Of course," he said. "You can sit here." The little girl's smile widened, and she gave a small nod of satisfaction. The woman moved slowly, taking her seat next to them, her hands resting lightly on her lap. The soldier remained nearby, quietly observing. He had learned over time that some moments didn't require words, that sometimes simply standing nearby and offering silent support was the most powerful thing you could do. For a few minutes, no one spoke. The ambient sounds of the bus station filled the air, but in their small group, there was a shared calm. The woman exhaled slowly, as if letting go of some invisible weight she had been carrying. The little girl broke the silence first. "You look tired," she said gently. "Do you want to talk about it?" The woman considered the question for a moment. She had spent so long keeping her feelings to herself that speaking them out loud felt strange. But something about the child's honest, non-judgmental curiosity encouraged her to try. "I lost someone important recently," she said quietly. "I didn't know how to keep going, and I felt like no one understood. Everyone around me seemed too busy with their own lives." The father nodded slowly. "It's hard when that happens," he said. "But sometimes just telling someone even a little can make it easier to breathe." The little girl looked at the woman with wide eyes. "It's okay to feel sad," she said. "My dad says sadness doesn't mean you're weak. It just means you love and you care." The woman's eyes softened, and for the first time that morning, she allowed herself to smile faintly. "Thank you," she whispered. I think I needed someone to remind me of that." The soldier shifted slightly, feeling the power of these words. He had been trained to handle stress, chaos, and danger, yet it was a child's simple explanation of sadness and love that made his chest tighten. He remembered all the times he had seen others struggle silently, how often people felt alone, even in a crowd. This small, unassuming interaction reminded him of the importance of presence, of listening, and of kindness. A bus engine rumbled nearby, signaling the arrival of another group of passengers. People hurried past, lifting bags and calling out to loved ones. but their small circle remained steady, untouched by the chaos around them. The woman took another breath and looked at the little girl. "You're very brave," she said softly. "It takes courage to care so much." The girl shrugged lightly, her eyes serious. "I just try to do what's right," she said. "My dad helps people, and he taught me that small things can mean a lot. You don't need to do something huge. Just be kind." The father smiled at his daughter, pride shining in his eyes. "She's right," he said. "Kindness is never wasted. It reaches people when they least expect it." The soldier felt a quiet resonance with those words. He had been through situations where small gestures had made a difference, where holding a hand, offering a word, or simply being present had shifted a moment or a life. And now, in this ordinary place, he saw it again, unplanned and pure. The woman's shoulders relaxed a little more. "I've been carrying so much," she said softly. "I didn't realize how much lighter it would feel to just share it." The little girl squeezed her father's hand briefly and then leaned slightly toward the woman. "See? You're not alone," she said. "Even if it feels that way sometimes, people can care. And you can let them." The father nodded in agreement. "She's right. There's strength in letting someone in. You don't have to carry it all yourself." The soldier moved slightly closer, offering silent support. The woman noticed and gave a small nod of appreciation. In that simple acknowledgement, an unspoken understanding passed between them. No words were necessary. Presence alone carried meaning. Time seemed to stretch in that small corner of the station. The noise and movement continued around them, but within their circle there was a gentle rhythm, a shared moment of human connection. Each of them felt it, understood it, and appreciated it. The woman spoke again, her voice firmer now. "I think I can face the rest of the day," she said. "I feel like I have a little more hope." The little girl's eyes sparkled. "See? I told you. My dad says hope is important. And sometimes people remind you of it when you least expect it." The father smiled warmly at the child, then looked at the woman. "Even small reminders can carry a lot of weight," he said. "It's amazing how a child can teach us things we've forgotten as adults." The soldier quietly agreed with that sentiment. He had been reminded today that courage and understanding were not just found in training or experience. They were found in openness, in honesty, and in the willingness to care. The little girl tugged lightly on her father's hand. "I think she's ready," she said. "Ready to move forward, at least a little." The woman nodded, taking a deep breath. "Yes," she said. "I think I am." They all remained quiet for a few moments, letting the calm settle in. The station continued its usual rhythm, but the woman, the girl, her father, and the soldier had shared something extraordinary. A human connection built from simple kindness, understanding, and presence. Finally, the father said, "We should probably get ready to board soon. But remember, even after this, kindness and hope can follow you anywhere." The little girl smiled and squeezed his hand. "I know. And I think today reminded us all of that." The woman looked around at her surroundings, noticing the bustling station by feeling a new sense of calm. "Thank you," she said again, softly but sincerely, "for reminding me that I'm not alone, and for reminding me that hope still exists." The soldier nodded one last time, his eyes reflecting quiet respect and understanding. No one spoke for a moment, but each of them felt the connection, the warmth, and the subtle but powerful impact of their shared time together. The bus doors hissed open at the far end of the station. Passengers began moving toward their destinations, some in a hurry, some slowly. The group of four stayed for a few more seconds, savoring the last moments of this small, extraordinary encounter. And in that ordinary, noisy, busy bus station, a little girl's words, a father's presence, A woman's courage to open her heart, and a soldier's quiet understanding created a space where kindness and hope could thrive, leaving an impression that would last far longer than the passing buses or the brief morning hours. The bus station continued its steady rhythm. But for the little group, the morning felt different now. Time seemed slower, gentler, more meaningful. The woman, the little girl, her father, and the Navy soldier had shared something unexpected, and each of them carried it quietly within themselves. The bus that had arrived earlier was now preparing to depart. Passengers hustled to their seats, doors closed with a hiss, and engines rumbled as the vehicle began to move. The little girl and her father stood together, holding hands, watching the bus pull away. The woman remained seated for a moment, taking in the small feeling of relief and hope that had grown inside her. Finally, she gathered her bag and stood. The little girl tugged gently at her father's hand. "Do you want to come with us for a little while?" she asked, her eyes earnest. "You don't have to go alone." The woman hesitated, feeling the weight of her own hesitation and pride. Then she looked at the child, at the kindness that had been offered so freely, and she felt something shift. "I think I'd like that," she said softly. The father gestured toward the space beside him, making room for her to walk alongside them. The little girl beamed, feeling proud that she had been able to help. She had never imagined that simply offering comfort could lead to this. A human connection that felt warm, real, and lasting. The Navy soldier stood nearby, giving a respectful nod as he watched the group move together. He had seen many difficult situations, both in his service and in life, but moments like this reminded him of the quiet power of presence. It was not about grand gestures or recognition. It was about being there, offering support without expectation, and allowing others to feel seen. As they walked toward the far end of the station, the woman felt a strange sense of calm. The burden she had carried for so long had not disappeared, but it had lightened. She realized that hope could be found even in small interactions, even in places as ordinary as a bus station. And sometimes it took only a child's courage to remind an adult that they were not alone. The little girl skipped lightly beside her father, occasionally glancing back at the woman to make sure she was keeping up. "See?" she whispered to him. "She's smiling a little now." Her father smiled, gently squeezing her hand. "Yes," he said. "That's because you reminded her that someone cares. You reminded her that small things matter." The woman walked quietly, absorbing their words. She felt a warmth she hadn't expected, a sense of connection that went beyond simple conversation. In this crowded, noisy station, a child, a parent, and a soldier had reminded her that the world still held kindness. The soldier followed at a respectful distance, noticing the small details, the way the little girl's eyes sparkled when she saw someone in need, the way the father stayed attentive and gentle, the way the woman's posture had shifted from sadness to tentative hope. Each detail was small, but together they formed a mosaic of human connection that was far more powerful than anything he had seen in uniform or on duty. The little girl leaned toward her father and whispered, "Do you think she'll be okay?" He looked at the woman and then back at his daughter. "I do," he said. "You gave her a reminder she needed. That can change everything, even if just a little." The woman looked at them both and finally spoke, her voice clear and steady. "Thank you," she said, genuinely. "I came here feeling so lost, but you reminded me that there's hope, and that even when things feel dark, people can care. Even strangers can make a difference." The little girl smiled, proud that her simple words had made such a difference. Her father put an arm around her shoulder, and she leaned in, feeling a quiet pride. The soldier watched, silently acknowledging the power of human kindness in its simplest form. The bus at the far end had finished boarding passengers and was ready to leave. People hustled toward the doors, but for this small group, time seemed to have slowed. They lingered for a moment, savoring the quiet connection they had shared. The woman finally straightened her shoulders fully and took a deep breath. "I feel ready to face the rest of the day," she said, a small smile forming on her lips. "I feel lighter." The little girl's eyes lit up. "See?" she said. "I told you that hope was important. And sometimes it shows up in ways you don't expect." Her father smiled at her warmly. "She's right," he said. "Hope is always around. Sometimes it's just hidden until someone reminds you it exists." The Navy soldier nodded silently, understanding completely. He had been reminded today that life's most important lessons were often simple. Noticing someone's pain, offering kindness, and being present without expecting anything in return. He realized that, in the end, courage was not just about action in extreme situations. It was about showing up for others, even in ordinary places. The woman took a final look around the station, noticing the rush of people and the noise that once seemed overwhelming. Now, she saw it differently, not as chaos, but as life moving forward. She felt ready to continue her journey, carrying with her the small but powerful reminder that human connection and kindness could make even ordinary moments extraordinary. The little girl held her father's hand tightly, and the father gave her a reassuring squeeze. Together, they walked toward the exit, the woman beside them, feeling lighter and more hopeful than she had in a long time. The soldier watched them go, a quiet smile on his face, knowing that this brief encounter had left an impression on everyone involved. As the group moved toward the station doors, the woman glanced back once, just briefly, and gave a small wave to the soldier. He returned it with a nod, a silent acknowledgement of shared understanding and respect. No words were needed. The moment had already said everything. The little girl whispered to her father, "Do you think he understands now?" "Yes," he said quietly. "He does. And so do you." The woman walked beside them, her steps lighter than before, her chest not as heavy. She felt hope, presence, and connection, the kind that could carry her through whatever came next. And she realized that sometimes the smallest gestures, a few words from a child, a hand offered, a silent presence could change a day, and maybe even a life. The bus station, still busy and loud around them, faded into the background. The group moved forward together, connected by an invisible thread of compassion, understanding, and shared humanity. It was a reminder that in the midst of ordinary life, extraordinary moments could happen. Moments that touched hearts and reminded people that they were never truly alone. And as they stepped out into the sunlight, each of them carried a small, unspoken truth, that kindness matters, presence matters, and even a brief encounter could leave a lasting mark. A little girl's courage, a father's gentle guidance, a woman's willingness to accept help, and a soldier's quiet understanding had created something lasting, a memory of hope, human connection, and the power of simple, heartfelt kindness.